Hello, and welcome to Based on a True Story, the podcast that compares your favorite Hollywood movies with history. Today, we're going to be looking at all 6 of the Jurassic Park and Jurassic World movies at once. I'm sure you're familiar with these films, but here is a quick refresher. The franchise started with 1993's Jurassic Park, which was directed by Steven Spielberg and based on the 1990 novel of the same name by Michael Crichton. Jurassic Park sets up the storyline of a nearly completed theme park filled with dinosaurs brought back from extinction. Then there was 1997's The Lost World, Jurassic Park, also directed by Steven Spielberg, and it continues the story based on Michael Crichton's 1995 novel of the same name. In The Lost World, the team of scientists are sent to another island, less than 100 miles from where the original Jurassic Park took place, to study how the dinosaurs managed to survive. The next movie is Jurassic Park 3. That was directed by Joe Johnston and released in 2001 as the final film in the original Jurassic Park trilogy. This storyline brings back Dr. Alan Grant and Dr. Ellie Sattler from the first movie to help a couple find their missing son on the island filled with dinosaurs. 14 years later, the Jurassic franchise came back with 2015's Jurassic World. That movie was directed by Colin Trevorrow, and it's the first time that we get to see a functioning theme park filled with dinosaurs. That theme park doesn't last long, though, and that sets up the next movie, 2018's Jurassic World: Fallen Kingdom. That film was directed by J.A. Boyana and tells the story of trying to rescue the remaining dinosaurs from the impending doom of a volcanic eruption. Last, but certainly not least, we have the third film in the Jurassic World trilogy and the 6th film in the overall Jurassic Park franchise, 2022's Jurassic World Dominion. That movie was, again, directed by Colin Trevorrow, and it was marketed as the epic conclusion of the Jurassic era, as it concludes the entire Jurassic franchise. The storyline in Jurassic World Dominion gives us a peek at what it's like for humans and dinosaurs to live alongside each other. Obviously, the storylines of the entire Jurassic franchise is fictional, but I'm excited to be joined by the Paleontology Consultant for all 6 of the movies and world-renowned paleontologist, Jack Horner. Before we chat with Jack, it's time to set up our game. 2 truths and a lie. If you're new to the show, here's how it works. I'm about to say 3 things. 2 of them are true. That means one of them is an all-out lie. Are you ready? Okay, here they are. Number 1. The current scenario of what killed off the dinosaurs is a meteor. Number 2. They knew about feathered dinosaurs when the first Jurassic Park movie was made. Number 3. The T-Rex could run over 60 miles per hour. Got 'em? Okay, now as you're listening to our story today, your challenge is to find the 2 facts scattered somewhere throughout the episode, and then of course we'll do a recap at the end of the episode to see how well you did. All right. Now it's time to connect with Jack Horner about the historical depiction of dinosaurs in Jurassic Park. Near the beginning of the first Jurassic Park movie, we're introduced to the 2 main characters, Dr. Sattler, a paleobotanist, and Dr. Grant, a paleontologist. They're working together on a dig site in the Badlands in Montana. My question for you is more about Dr. Grant, because not only were you a consultant on the first Jurassic Park movie, but the filmmakers based the character of Dr. Grant on you. So what was your first impression when you saw Sam Neill's character portraying someone based on you in the movie?
Well, first off, it was Michael Crichton who wrote, who created the character. He had just read one of my first books called Digging Dinosaurs, and it was about the discovery of baby dinosaurs and stuff like that. And so, it when and that character, Alan Grant character in Michael Crichton's book, was actually based on 2 people, 2 of us paleontologists, a guy named Bob Bacher and myself, and we had both written books that Michael Crichton read, and then he created this single character. And then when Steven Spielberg started making Jurassic Park, he separated the two characters and made, Sam Neill became Alan Grant, and he was supposed to be portraying me. And then in the second version of Jurassic Park 2, the Lost World, he created another character for Bob. So it was interesting to see, and Michael Crichton had tried to get some things right, and some things were just fictional.
Sure. Sure. One impression that I got from the very first Jurassic Park movie was that the T Rex hunted alone, and then the Velociraptors were pack hunters. And just my own personal thing, I remember before I saw the first Jurassic Park movie, I used to think that the T Rex was the big and the most dangerous dinosaur out there. But that opinion changed for me personally when I saw Jurassic Park. It made me think, well, the Raptors, they're smarter. They have the ability to pack and hunt in packs. Would that be a good impression to come away from the movie, that the Velociraptors were even more dangerous than a T-Rex?
Well, I think so. I mean, I honestly, I'm a proponent of the idea that T-Rex is really more of an opportunist. That it took sick animals, and that it wasn't a apex predator by any means. So it was out there scavenging and taking down weak animals. Whereas Velociraptor or the what we would call the raptorial Maniraptor dinosaurs, they were the apex predators. They just weren't very big, but you have a pack of them, and that's more dangerous than even a larger animal because they are more agile and can get around quicker, and 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 we think that that much like modern birds, modern raptors, modern raptor birds, that they probably would just literally just start eating their prey live. They didn't go to lions and tigers go to a lot of trouble to dispatch their prey first. They kill it, and then they start eating. Whereas birds oftentimes will knock their prey down, just stand on them and start eating them. So, they don't really worry about
Hmm.
whether the animal's alive or not.
Wow. Yeah, I think they even mentioned that a little bit, or Dr. Grant mentions that
Exactly.
in the movie, talking about how the Raptors would
Yeah, they
start
just
eating them
start
alive.
ripping you apart.
Neither one's a good way to
No,
go.
that's true.
You mentioned them going fast, and in the movies, I think they mentioned that the T Rex vision, well, one's based on movement, but then they also said they clocked it at 32 miles an hour. And then the Raptors in the first movie, they mentioned 50 to 60 miles an hour, but then I think in Jurassic World, they actually mentioned 40 to 50 miles an hour. Were the Raptors were faster
Well, the
then?
raptors were faster than T Rex, but T Rex couldn't run at all. The biomechanical studies that have been done on T Rex suggest that they might have been able to walk fast, but they could not run. The Velociraptors could run, but whether they could make 40 miles an hour or not, I think is questionable.
Oh, okay. Okay. So they really did rely a lot more on the pack mentality, it sounds like, if they weren't
Well,
as
yeah,
that fast.
more than likely, yes. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. At the beginning of the second movie, you mentioned that the Lost World, John Hammond explains how the dinosaurs have survived for 4 years since the first movie on their own, despite being bred lysine deficient as a form of security. And what should have killed him after 7 days without these supplemental enzymes, they're able to survive. And to quote Hammond from the movie, these creatures need our absence to survive, not our help. And that concept got me thinking about how different the environment and ecosystems are now compared to how it was when dinosaurs were alive. Do you think that dinosaurs could coexist and survive in today's environment with humans?
Well, they're not going to do well with benzene in the atmosphere or some of the other pollutants that we dump out, but But the climate really isn't that much different. I know a lot of people are sort of confused by time. The big giant dragonflies and the time when there was actually more oxygen in the atmosphere was actually 300 million years ago, not 65 million years ago. So that's people just get kind of confused by the whole time business. I don't think there was very much difference personally. At least all of this research I've seen suggests that it's negligible, the difference between then and now, other than the fact that that we're killing ourselves with pollutants and everything else.
Yeah, yeah, and I guess that could play a part into it, but from what it sounds like, yeah, it wouldn't be enough. Even that maybe may
No,
not be enough to
no,
have that.
they'd be pretty well off. Yeah.
In the Lost World, there's another species of dinosaur that gets some screen time, and it's shown throughout the entire franchise, and that's the compies. They're actually really cute in the movies. They're with their little chittering noises, and they're described as scavengers, and they of course turn deadly when they team up and kill Dieter Stark in that movie. How well did the movie depict what compies were really like?
Uh, Probably not at all. First off, first off, we only have a couple specimens, um, and they're found in lakes. So their carcass has literally washed out into a lake, and so we have really no behavioral information whatsoever. And they're basically a little Maniraptor, a little raptorial-like dinosaur themselves, and so there's really nothing to suggest that they weren't feeding, having feeding behaviors very similar to Velociraptor or other related dinosaurs.
One thing, obviously in Jurassic Park, they fill in the DNA with animals that we have. And so for something like a copy where we don't have a lot of information about them, um, is it possible at all to fill in any information about what they might have been like with other animals that may be similar in how their
Well,
makeup?
that really is how we do it. And when it comes to genetics, and you know we could 50% of our DNA is identical to a banana. So you could use a banana instead of a frog. I mean, it's sort of ridiculous to think that we that one animal is going to get us closer than another. Um, so when it comes to behaviors, we don't really, we've got literally one specimen of a plant eating dinosaur that has a bunch of Deinonychus teeth around it, more than would fit in the jaw. More than one animal could afford to lose, and that's our only evidence of pack hunting. I mean, we have so little information about the behaviors of any dinosaur that they're just, we get a little tiny bit of information, and then we arm wave, basically. It's all guesswork. We don't really know the behavior of any dinosaur. I mean, other than just the simplest things, like the baby dinosaurs. We have baby dinosaurs in a nest that doubled in size. So we can pretty easily hypothesize that the baby dinosaurs stayed in their nest for that period of time, that they didn't get out and go somewhere and then come back. I mean, no, really aren't animals that do that. So all we can do is make comparisons with modern animals that are related, and birds are the closest related animals. So I mean, that's all we can really do. I mean, in the movies, all of the behaviors you see of any of the dinosaurs are fiction. I mean, they're just fiction. That's the I as I say, accurate the only accurate depiction of any of the dinosaurs in any of the movies, as far as I'm concerned, is is of the Spinosaurus in the water. When you see the Spinosaurus with its fins sticking out of the water, it's in the water. That we know Spinosaurus could do.
And that's in the latest movie, Dominion, right? Where you see them in the caves with.
Well,
That's the one,
I'm thinking of Jurassic. I'm thinking of Jurassic Park 3.
Oh, okay.
Where it's in, you see. I mean, when it's running around on land, that's wrong. It couldn't do that.
Oh, so it was only in the water. It wasn't that it could go in the water.
Right.
It was only in the water.
Exactly.
Oh, okay.
It's a fish eater. It ate fish. It didn't eat anything else. It is evolved and adapted for eating fish.
I guess it wouldn't be as dangerous in the movies if it stayed in the water the whole time, though.
Well, I wouldn't want to be in the water with it myself, but.
Well, that's true. Speaking of Jurassic Park 3, there's another concept in that one that gets put forward, and it's the concept of 3D printing the resonating chamber. They do that for the Velociraptor. They basically create a 3D model from the skull, and then they're able to determine how the dinosaurs would sound. Has that actually been done? Do we know what dinosaurs could sound like?
We actually did that. That's based on some stuff we were doing at Montana State University, the engineering program. We CAT scanned the skull. It was a duckbill dinosaur skull, not a raptor. We CAT scanned a duckbill dinosaur skull, and then reconstructed its narial passageway, and then simulated air going through it, and we could get the pitch of the sound, but we couldn't make the sound. Obviously, you're just going to get the pitch. So we could determine that in the skull we used, which was a juvenile, that it produced a high pitched sound, which, of course, high pitched sounds don't carry very far. And then when we CAT scanned the adult, we could produce an infrasound, so it very deep, like an elephant. And sounds like that can carry over very long distances. So that was the research. That was what we determined. In the movie, it's fictionalized as as making something for a raptor and being able to communicate with it. If you just think about it for a moment, in any sound that, if you rapid prototype something, and even if it were made of bone, the sound, is being produced in an animal that has skin and muscle over it as well. So you're not going to get the same sound by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, resonating the bone is not the same as resonating the skull.
That's a good point. I mean, I guess it's a similar type concept to make sure understanding. It's a similar type concept of, my voice sounds different to me than it does to you because it's having, in different, even in that way.
Yeah, but you just imagine, you're only using in this particular case, we're rapid prototyping not something that is a soft tissue, but actually is something that is a heart. It's actually the cranial bones themselves without any soft tissue involved. So it's obviously it's not going to sound at all like it, but you can get the pitch. You could at least, you'll know if it's high pitched or low pitched.
Kind of going back to something we were talking about earlier, but in Jurassic Park 3, there's a speech that Dr. Grant gives where he says, had there not been a cataclysmic event that killed them all off, it's entirely possible that raptors and not humans would be the dominant species on the planet. So I know it's kind of a what if question if they were around, but would that be correct? If they were here, could raptors be the dominant species on the planet?
Well, I'd say that's pretty anthropomorphic of us to think that, that unless you're intelligent, you're a dominant species. That's yeah, that's.
I mean, it's very hypothetical for sure.
Well, I mean, that's it'd be kind of like a kangaroo saying, if you hop, only you can only dominate the world if you hop. So I mean,
I love that analogy. That's great. uh, in After 14 years, the franchise came back in 2015 with Jurassic World, and according to that movie, a lot has changed. And one of the key plot points in that series then starts with they're designing completely new dinosaurs. Hybrids are being designed by mixing different DNA together to make dinosaurs that are bigger and scarier, of course, to draw in more crowds. The Indominus Rex is the big one in that. It's kind of a cross between a T-Rex, raptor, cuttlefish, frogs, probably more DNA, but the movie obscures that by calling it top secret. As an advisor on the movie, how involved were you in coming up with the species that could go into a fictional creation like the Indominus Rex?
well, as I was explaining to Colin Trevenant, this creating a dinosaur like a transgenic dinosaur is actually more accurate than it. It is completely accurate, right? I mean, we've designed it, so it's the perfect animal. It's more perfect than the T Rex, because the T Rex, we just have its skeleton, and we are surmising what the rest of the animal looks like. If you're genetically making a dinosaur or any other kind of animal, and you are using transgenics to do it, not that we know how to do very much transgenics. I mean, we do transgenics. We make glowfish and things like that. Um, then you make, if you could make what you're plan to make, it would be perfect, right? I mean, you would know exactly what it was. So Indominus Rex is the most accurate animal in all of those movies.
That's fascinating. I didn't even think about it that way. It makes perfect sense, though. Speaking of being an advisor on the movie, since you worked on the first three, of course, the Jurassic Park, and then the first one was released in 1993. The most recent movie, 29 years later. Uh, are there things that we've learned about dinosaurs in almost 3 decades that have changed how we see them on screen between the initial movie and then the Jurassic World movies now?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we knew, when we were making Jurassic Park, we knew that the raptors should be feathered and more colorful. Um, Feathers were just, technologically not possible in 1993. Um, they the computer graphics used was brand new, and the puppets would have, looked silly if they'd have tried to put feathers. So, it wasn't technologically possible. As far as color goes, we know that dinosaurs were a lot more colorful than we see them in the movie. But Steven wanted a scary movie, and so he didn't think colorful dinosaurs would be all that scary, other than the spitter, right? That flashes its colorful frill at you, which of course, that is a totally fictionalized dinosaur. Everything is fictional about that dinosaur except its name. Deinonychus is a dinosaur. It's a very poorly preserved dinosaur. We don't really know much about it at all, so it was a good one to fictionalize.
Oh. You get to fill in the holes however you
Right,
want.
exactly.
So we don't know if that one spit or anything like that, or had any sort
No,
of. Would it
that,
be possible
that's
to
that
know if any of them
that
had that sort of a defense mechanism?
that's just all total fiction.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, there's just no way to know stuff like that.
Hmm. Well, one thing that we see in Jurassic World is the character of Owen Grady. He's training a pack of raptors, and Blue in particular seems to be one that bonds with him. And this helps to reinforce the concept throughout all the movies that raptors are especially dangerous. So we talked about because of their intelligence. Do we know if they were that smart that it would be possible to train them? I know some animals now can be trained easier than others. Would that be the case for raptors as a species more than other species?
Well, they're basically they're related to birds, and we don't train very many birds to do very many things. Um, you know, imagine trying to train a duck.
I can honestly say I've never never imagined that until this moment. I don't think it
So,
would go very well though.
no, it probably wouldn't. We just, we don't really know. But the brain to body, if you're just looking at the brain to body ratio of a velociraptor like dinosaur, it's really no different than most, ordinary birds. So,
Okay.
they do train hawks and animals like that to fetch something, but the behaviors, of birds are so different than the behaviors of mammals. We are a mammal, and so we can kind of bond with other mammals, but it's hard. I mean, I had a parrot for a while, and it didn't like me, so I couldn't bond at all with it.
Yeah, that's a good point. I guess they pick whether or not
That's
you're
right.
going to buy.
Exactly. Yeah.
In Fallen Kingdom, another the Jurassic World, we see the island of Isla Nublar have a volcano that wakes up and causes an extinction level event. And as a movie, I know the event was made up for the movie, but then as someone who also doesn't really know about much about what really happened, I kind of assumed that this event was maybe a smaller possibility of what might have actually happened across the globe to kill off the dinosaurs. Why do you think the dinosaurs went extinct? Was it because of a natural disaster like a volcano?
Well, the current scenario is a meteor. Um, it is a meteor that hits um, the Yucatan Peninsula of Mexico, and it's a huge meteor, a couple of miles long or in diameter, and that explosion um, creates a huge um, tsunami worldwide. It creates earthquakes that are 9 on the Richter scale worldwide. I mean, it's just it shakes the world and blows a bunch of trees and all dirt and water and all sorts of things into space. And then when all of that stuff returns, it becomes incandescent and literally starts world fires all over the place. And I mean, the scenario is extraordinary, and it is global, right? So I mean, it creates problems all over the place. And then there's a suggestion that it also ignites the Deccan traps on the opposite side of the world. That starts the volcanism, and so it's a scenario that appears to be, I mean, we definitely know that it happened, and whether it is all that it took to kill the dinosaurs is it's certainly possible. One of the things that most people don't realize about dinosaurs, when we think about dinosaurs dominated the earth for 150 million years. And in that period of time, they really did not diversify very much. I mean, there's just a few different kinds, right? I mean, there's armored dinosaurs, and there's duck-billed dinosaurs, and there's horned dinosaurs, and there's long-necked dinosaurs, and then there's meat-eating dinosaurs. There just isn't very much variety. And if you look at the plant-eating dinosaurs, there's very little feeding diversity. I mean, basically, the ankylosaurs, the primitive ornithopods, the pachycephalosaurs, the dome-headed dinosaurs, all of these dinosaurs have teeth that look virtually identical, like they're eating ferns, right? And so there's not much feeding diversity, and without all of that diversity, it probably extinction was they were doomed. I mean that you know you have a big worldwide event like that, and the survival of life depends on diversity in all different groups of animals. So a whole bunch of animals went extinct. A lot of birds went extinct, but birds were diverse enough at that point in time. They were probably feeding on seeds and things like that, and so they made it. Mammals were nocturnal, basically living underground, so they did fine. And crocodile, the cold-blooded animals did fine because they could just, you can, if you ever had a pet snake or something, or a turtle or something like that, they can go for months without eating anything. So they're fine. So dinosaurs I think they just didn't have much feeding diversity, and quite frankly, they weren't very diverse in any aspect of them. And they were also, pretty big. I mean, big animals are more vulnerable in an environment than little animals are. So, I mean, there's all of that too. So,
Yeah, because you have to eat
so
more. You have to eat more, and when yeah,
exactly.
yeah. Is there something about dinosaurs that would keep them from diversifying like that, like other types of animals would?
Well, not, not, not really. So one of the things that when we think about evolution and things that actually, pressure organisms into diversifying, oftentimes has to do with we call it, vicariance, basically breaking up geography so that you get populations in one area and another area, and they can diverge from one another. Um, and the continent of Pangea, when it broke up, um, we ended up with sort of well, basically all of the dinosaurs were evolving before Pangea broke up. And so when it broke up during the Triassic period, you had, dinosaurs in Africa and dinosaurs in South America. They're all related to each other, right? And they do diversify a little bit, but not very much. So mammal, when we look at mammal populations and the kinds of diversity that we see in mammals, it it looks like it's when these isolated populations are separate for a while and then are brought back together again, so they're competing with one another. Then then you see a lot of competition, a lot of things go extinct, and a lot of things adapt. But the dinosaurs that didn't happen with the dinosaurs. The continents came apart. That's about all they did. They came apart and they didn't really go back together again. So we don't have a lot of populations that are mixing from one place to another to sort of drive this kind of diversity.
Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. Speaking of that, with in Fallen Kingdom, when I was watching that, something that kind of stuck with me, it kind of realized was throughout all the movies, um, the key part where the parks are, where the dinosaurs are cloned or and then thrive, tends to be a hotter climate, a tropical type climate. I think in Nublar's, just off Costa Rica, we do see a little bit of difference in the final film in Dominion. We see some of them living in snowy climates alongside elephants in the African sun, and so on. But even then, the headquarters in that movie are in the Dolomite Mountain Range. It's still a very tropical looking environment, even though they're surrounded by snowy mountains. Uh, is there a historical reason to why they would have put them in a hotter climate instead of something different?
Yes, there is it is historical, but it's fictional history, right? It's fictional history. I mean, that's where we expect dinosaurs to be, is in tropical places. But they lived all over the world. Dinosaurs lived all over the world. They lived above the Arctic Circle.
Hmm.
They lived in Antarctica. I mean, they lived everywhere. There wasn't ice. At the time they lived in Antarctica, there was palm trees in Antarctica, but 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 they did live in different environments, and And quite frankly, we don't. The funny thing is that tropical environments do not preserve in the fossil record, and so we don't really have any examples of them living in the tropics. So it's always funny when you see them in the tropics because, and even most of the environments that we know of that we have fossil records for are kind of like Louisiana. Now, I guess you could call that subtropical, right?
It's warm.
Um, I mean, it would have been warm and humid in most of the places that we do find fossils of dinosaurs, but on the other hand, they were living far enough north and far enough south that there would have been dark spells, for a couple of months as well. So they're it's the whole tropical thing is literally is our expectation of them being in those kind of environments. It's kind of like volcanoes, right? I mean, volcanoes probably didn't erupt any more than they erupt now, but we always want a volcano in the background of our dinosaurs, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we always want a volcano.
Yeah. Yeah. No, make a great point. Earlier, you're talking about the feathers, and in the latest, the final film, Jurassic World Dominion, we do see dinosaurs having feathers. You mentioned it being a technological limitation in the earlier movies. Did most of the dinosaurs actually have feathers, or was it kind of a mix? Because even in the later movies, we see some have feathers and some do not.
We're pretty certain. Well, in the movie, we have to maintain the animals. Remember, they're cloned back in 1993,
Mm.
so they can't be changing the way they
Can't
look.
grow feathers, man.
They can't grow feathers, right? So basically the dinosaurs in Dominion that have feathers, they kind of explain that by saying they did, they made them pure, right? I mean, they didn't add anything to them, and so I mean that's what dinosaurs would look like. The meat-eating dinosaurs. So all of the Saurischian dinosaurs, with the exception of sauropods, in other words, the true meat-eating dinosaurs, we're pretty sure were all feathered. So basically, all of the theropod dinosaurs, we're pretty sure were all feathered. And we have some indications that some of the ornithischian dinosaurs, the non-sauropod plant eaters, had some kind of frilly looking stuff that went down the middle of their back and sometimes in some other areas on their bodies, but not totally feathered like we see in the meat-eating dinosaurs. And there was a study recently done that suggested that theropod dinosaurs were actually true warm-blooded animals like like mammals, um, and that the ornithischian dinosaurs were not. Although I suspect the ornithischian dinosaurs were probably heterothermic, which means that they they still generated heat internally, just didn't um, regulate it quite like we do.
We talked about some of the other genetically engineered dinosaurs in the other movies, but here in the final film, Jurassic World Dominion, it's the first time that we see the Giganotosaurus, and the movie says that it is the biggest of all dinosaurs. Is that true? Is it really the biggest of all the dinosaurs that we know about?
Well, that's another one of those, we can tell by looking at the bone histology of animals whether they're still growing or not. Um, and and all of the T Rex specimens that I have seen are all still growing. So we know that we're going to keep finding bigger T Rexes. Giganotosaurus is another one. I mean, its skull is bigger than a T Rex skull when the body is still the same size as a T Rex. So it's a matter of how you're going to measure the size of these animals. Um, we don't, we don't even really know the total length of any dinosaur very well. I mean, might be a few of them that we have the entire skeleton of, but we don't have very many of them. So we just take wild guesses as to really how long they are or how massive they were. We don't really even understand the mass of a dinosaur very well. People still argue you know about that. I mean, are you going to compare them to a chicken? Are you going to compare them to a crocodile? I mean, what kind of an animal are you going to compare them to? So, we're just not really positive, not sure exactly, the mass of an animal or the weight of an animal or the length of an animal. And Giganotosaurus and T-Rex are basically the same size. I mean, they're both big. But, when it comes to, a big animal that eats meat, Spinosaurus eats fish, and fish, I don't know, it's not vegetables, so I'd call it a meat eater. And Spinosaurus is a lot bigger than a T-Rex. So, and it's a lot bigger than a Giganotosaurus. So Spinosaurus is the largest flesh-eating dinosaur that we know of.
Wow. Wow. And that was in the water.
Or they live. Well, we can, we scientists can argue about that too. I think they were obligate piscivores, which means they ate fish and they never left the water. But there's a whole bunch of other scientists that think that one of my friends thinks that they were like a heron and walked around, eating fish out of the water like a heron does, and some of them think that they just went in the water once in a while, and I don't know, but they've got teeth that had to evolve, um, that had to change considerably from the primitive condition to the derived condition used for eating fish. And the fact that their teeth changed, evolved to this shape that is that we see in all animals that eat fish, tells me that they ate fish, and that if you're going to eat fish, there's no reason to be running around on the land.
You're not going to find many fish there.
That's right. That's right.
What's one of your favorite stories from your time working on the Jurassic Park and Jurassic World movies?
I don't know that I have a favorite. I mean, I enjoyed working on the movie. I enjoyed sitting there with Steven and seeing what he does and see how he does it. And he oftentimes he'd shoot a scene and say, "Jack, what'd you think of that?" And I'd say, "Well, it looked good to me." And he'd say, "No, that was terrible." And then he'd shoot some more, and he'd shoot for another whole bunch of times, and then he'd say, he said, "This was the good one." And I could see that it was a lot better, but I could also see that a fair director could have made a movie with a lot less shooting, right? I mean, and still come out with a pretty good movie. So I, just seeing how it's done was interesting, but it was it was boring to watch. I mean, the actors, everybody's just standing around waiting to do something. I mean, it is definitely not. I wouldn't trade my job for their job for anything. I mean, there wasn't anybody in the whole place that I thought had a job that I would trade dinosaur hunting for. I mean, it just wasn't. I mean, the set director, Rick Carter, I mean, he was great. The guy that was on Jurassic Park, he was a great guy, and he was building stuff all the time and making these cool scenes, and it was really cool to see. But it was all fake too, right? I mean, it was all made out of styrofoam, and I mean, and you see you think about the the scenes, with the T-Rex and all that stuff. I mean, you know, they're if you watch Jurassic Park, the first one, and you see a whole dinosaur, that's a computer graphic. So there's nothing there, right? I mean, you're just shooting a scene with nothing in it, and then if you see part of a dinosaur, it's an animatronic, and the animatronics are really cool. Stan Winston and his crew are, I mean, they were artists, boy. They made the coolest dinosaurs ever. But they're just pieces of them. So you see the foot come down in the mud in Jurassic, it's a foot. I mean, so and the Spinosaurus was life size. I mean, it was a gigantic animatronic, and it was the whole front end of the body. So that was pretty cool to see. But like I say, I was there for Jurassic Park 3, and Joe Johnston was the director, and again, I mean, he's a good friend, but I was just bored to death. I mean, it's the same thing over and over and over again. I would go out and walk around to the other studios and see what else was going on and what somebody else was shooting. I just, yeah, not my cup of tea. I like the movie. I like the end. I like to see it, when it's done. But you can't even tell. You can watch the whole making of the movie and still not know what it's about. I mean, unless you've read the storyboard, looked at the storyboards to see what it is, there's no way to tell even when they're shooting what it's going to look like because they don't shoot everything in order. I mean, yeah, no,
They call it movie magic for a reason, I guess.
that's
It's
right.
magic when you see it at the end.
Yeah, but I admire them all. They do a great job. I am entertained when I watch a movie or see something on TV or something. It's impressive, but
Yeah,
I don't want to do it myself.
that's fair. What's one of the more common misconceptions about dinosaurs that you think would surprise people?
Well, like I say, we scientists argue over all kinds of trivial stuff. Whether T Rex was a scavenger or a predator, or all sorts of things. This day and age, you still have to convince people that dinosaurs and people didn't live together.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's fair. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure movies like Jurassic Park um, don't always help that. I mean, I'm sure they help in some ways, but in other ways, because it is showing dinosaurs and humans together, and
Yeah,
that's yeah,
yeah. No, we, that we've been finding feathered dinosaurs for a long time, but most people don't know that they're feathered, and most people, you know, their idea of what a dinosaur looks like is based on Jurassic Park, if it's based on anything. And those dinosaurs, I mean, they're just completely out of date. I mean, they're, that's just not what they really look like. But it's, better than nothing.
yeah, yeah. That's true. That's true. And I mean, what about 30 years or so between the first movie and the latest one? So it has had a huge impact on a lot of people's opinions on dinosaurs over the time, and
Hmm.
I'm sure it will continue to influence generations to come. And yet, as is the nature of movies, two people can watch the very same movie. You walk out of it with very different impressions. So, with that
Yep.
in mind, what impression of dinosaurs do you want future generations who watch these movies, who want to learn more about dinosaurs? What do you want them to walk away with?
Well, it's the same thing with anything in nature. I mean, just being amazed by them is quite something, and being curious about them, and wanting to go to a museum and learn more about them and see their real bones. I mean, that's we there are a lot of great museums all over the world, and displaying basically all of the new science about dinosaurs, and I just encourage people to get to the museum and see stuff.
Yeah, it's a great way to learn more, for sure. Well, thank you so much for coming on to chat about the Jurassic Park and Jurassic World movies. I know we've been talking about the movies themselves, but you do a lot outside of the silver screen. So, for someone listening to this who wants to help support your work, can you give them an overview of what you're working on and where they can learn more?
Well, I'm working on all sorts of things. I'm trying. I study dinosaur growth and behavior, but I also, you know, working with artist Fabio Pastori in Italy, trying to reconstruct what I think dinosaurs look like, and they're much more colorful than what you see in the movies. Um, and and we have recently released some NFTs, and they're beautiful. I mean, the dinosaurs that we're creating are beautiful, and I think dinosaurs were beautiful. I think they were. I don't think they were just big gray clunky creatures. I think they were, they gave rise to birds, and and birds got their coloration, and they got their dances, and they got their singing. They got all of that from their ancestors, and their ancestors were dinosaurs. So I think if we ever are able to really depict these animals as they were as living creatures, we're going to see them extremely different than we imagine them right now based on movies.
For sure. Thank you again so much for your time, Jeff.
You're welcome.
This episode of Based on a True Story was produced by me, Dan Lefebvre. I'd like to thank Jack Horner once again for sharing his expertise about the history found in the Jurassic Park and Jurassic World movies. If you want to learn more about Jack's work with dinosaurs, be sure to check out Jack Horner's Dinosaurs at jackhornersdinosaurs.com. As always, you can find links to Jack's work in the show notes for this episode, as well as on the show's home on the web, basedonatruestorypodcast.com. Okay, now it's time for the answer to our 2 truths and a lie game from the beginning of the episode. As a refresher, here are the 2 truths and 1 lie. Number 1, the current scenario of what killed off the dinosaurs is a meteor. Number 2, they knew about feathered dinosaurs when the first Jurassic Park movie was made. Number 3, the T-Rex could run over 60 miles per hour. Did you find out which one is a lie? Let's go backwards and start with number 3. The T-Rex could run over 60 miles per hour. That's the lie. As we learned, the T-Rex couldn't actually run at all. So it seems the whole scene with the T-Rex running down the Jeep in the first Jurassic Park, that's all fiction. That means number 2 is true. They knew about feathered dinosaurs when the first Jurassic Park movie was made. Jack told us that even though they knew the Raptors should be feathered when the first Jurassic Park movie was made, back in the early 1990s, the technology just wasn't there to make them look real enough. Plus, Steven Spielberg wanted the movie to be a lot scarier than it probably would have been had the dinosaurs looked more colorful and feathered. Then, of course, in the later movies, they had to keep the continuity of the way the dinosaurs looked from that first movie. That means number 1 is also true. The current scenario of what killed off the dinosaurs is a meteor. We learned what killed off the dinosaurs was most likely a meteor that hit near Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula and caused tsunamis and earthquakes that, as Jack puts it, shook the world. If you enjoyed this episode, you can help support the next episode and get ad-free versions of the show over at basedonatruestorypodcast.com/support. Once again, that's basedonatruestorypodcast.com/support. Until next time, thanks so much for listening, and I'll chat with you again really soon.